on our supersensible faculties. I think if you look at Neptune coming into Pisces, you're a Pisces, aren't you?
I'm Pisces sun, and that happened when I was in Japan, because as we both know, both Neptune and Chiron are in Pisces, and that was happening around that time.
Yeah, that's true. It was taking its first steps. It's retrograded for a bit back in Aquarius, but it will, the first of the year, right after the first of the year, Neptune will step and be over there for over 14 years. It'll be in Pisces, and I think, for me, I think that's where we begin more. I mean, you see with Hay House, all these, it's becoming much more mainstream for people to talk about intuition. It's not just, it's really become much more mainstream to be able to talk about your intuition. And it wasn't that long ago, if I mentioned my intuition in a conversation, people would, or my guidance or whatever, it would have been, but now it's much more accepted. So I think that will help us develop the language for this deepening process as our sight, our sense of sight, our, the clairsentience, which is the clear, the clear feeling, the clear seeing, so that you really can begin to experience truth directly, rather than as a projection.
Exactly. And, as we both know, and I'm sure many of our listeners know, they talk about a picture, being worth 1,000 words, and for me an experience is worth 1,000 pictures. When somebody has a direct experience, and of course, the old adage, seeing is believing, is not. It's believing is seeing. When we're open to it, then we begin to experience it. Mm-hmm. And the fact that it is now, there is this tipping point, which is crucial, which is that more and more people are being open to these possibilities, and therefore we will begin to more and more experience them.
Yes. And I think it's happening individually through each of us.
It has to.
Some of us are birthing that consciousness more rapidly. Just because we contracted for that, probably. I mean, we're wired for it. Certain ones of us are really just attracted, and then I think there are people who in families that maybe are not at all. They're pretty conservative, and they're like the odd one out. They're the one that's different, I know myself. I worked for years, not in my family, but as a satellite, just continuing to transmit information and work energetically, which is maybe this is touching on some of the energetic connection, how we can use that to help shift things. You hear what I'm saying? Because it is connected. So you hear what I'm saying, how you can be psychically connected to someone like your family or whatever, and help them, because you are connected, help them to have a shift in consciousness and birth themselves.
Well, I think there's a number of things. If we go to the bigger picture, we've been sort of touching on the astrology, and for me, as for you, in fact, understanding the astrological influences that are taking us through, the last couple of years, through now and through 2012 and beyond, I think are very, very profound. And when Pluto did move into Capricorn, I think the old institutions, the old structures, really noticeably started to fracture. Where they could transmute, they are doing so. Where they're not, they're just fracturing and falling away. And I think the other thing with Pluto in Capricorn is that anything that's been hidden is no longer hidden. It is coming to the surface because it has to. Because otherwise, we're either in denial, and that helps with what you're saying about getting with the program. Because if we can see what the program is, if we're aware of what the program is, we can begin to get with it. So I think Pluto's doing a fabulous job of raising what has been hidden to the surface. And I think together with Pluto, the other sort of outer planets have been moving, and especially this year, into incredibly important positions. I mean, with Uranus going into Aries, Uranus, the great revolutionary, the great awakener, moved into Aries, the sign of empowerment. And for me, that kick-started the Arab Spring. But it also kick-started so many other initiatives of people power. you know, not just through the Arab world, but generally. And I think that's going to be a trend that just continues. And this thing about, you know, you're saying about think tanks, people come together, not just to think, but to act. So, for example, online activism, such as through Avars and through others, is moving forward at an incredible pace and really having an effect. And so Uranus and Aries, I think, allies with Pluto and Cap. And I think the other one is as we've mentioned, I think perhaps before the show, but Neptune and Chiron, both of them now having gone into Pisces and then pulling out a little bit, but then going back in again. I think Neptune goes back in again in February of next year and then stays for a long time. And of course Neptune is the great measure of reality. So I think with Pisces being the sign of more spiritual understanding, and Aquarius at the moment being the sign of who am I? Who am I really? I think we've got this amazing influence to look and understand what is real, what is illusion, what is about who we really are, and what can we do about it. So all of that planetary influence I think is enormous at the moment. And what it's doing, it's actually part of this incredible tidal shift of consciousness that we're really sort of like bobbing along on. And so I think that's part of the bigger picture that's to a degree hidden. But I think it is also very challenging because what it's doing is it's shaking us awake, because it's so easy for us to just pull back, almost fear-based reaction of retreat into old paradigms. And yet what all of this is doing is saying, no, you know, go forward, go with this, get with the program. And when we do, then it really is amazing. And so I think people are doing that, things are changing, and there are still major challenges because we've really got to break down the old in a way. You know, the financial system, we had a chance to really radically go beyond its dysfunctionality in 2007 and 8, and we didn't. And the powers that be, the vested interest and our own fear, I think just hold back. But this year, and the various Mercury retros this year, are exactly the same as they were in 1932. So what I feel is happening is like what goes around comes around, but it's a spiral. So we're given another opportunity to make this time a much more positive, radical, revolutionary change about moving on from what no longer serves us.
And
There's no choice.
Yeah, well, so what are some of the things that you see happening that would be positive as far as transforming the financial institutions and the way things, the established order?
Well, you know, I think first of all, what happens is down to our choices. And we cannot, just as what's happening at the leading edge of science is far too important to just keep with the scientists, what's happening within the financial system affects every single one of us. And the trouble is, over the last decade, the level of inequality that's been driven through the existing system is just unsustainable. And also the level of speculation, you know, what's been called casino banking. And the fact that, you know, when it goes wrong, it's not just the guys who are speculating. You know, they're speculating with other people's money, in other words, our money. When it goes wrong, as it did in 2007, 8, you know, we're the ones who are bailing them out. I think this coming couple of eclipses in November and December, and the fact that Mercury...
Talk about that. Yes, I wanted to ask you what you thought about these eclipses that have been happening.
Well, you know, it's going to be amazing, I think, because first of all, we've got 6 eclipses this year instead of the usual 4, but the last 2 of the year are on November the 25th, which is a partial solar, and then we've got December the 10th, which is a lunar, and Mercury goes retrograde the day before the solar eclipse and goes direct on the 14th of December, just after the lunar eclipse. So what we have is a retrograde Mercury arcing over these eclipses. And if you look at the charts for the eclipses, they are very, very challenging. And in particular, the chart for the solar eclipse in November arcs over the Eurozone. And just as it was Wall Street that really originated the 2007 and 8 global contagion, it's really what's happening in Eurozone with Greece as debts and possibly then, moving on to Italy and Spain, that's really pushing everybody. And that eclipse energy suggests that there could be a default. Now, for me, what's really important is we use these times to create radical reform in the financial system, and that was completely bottled in 2008. And the reforms that have come out now are still completely inadequate to deal with what's happening. And the problem is that the sovereign debt of countries is so vast that we talk about banks being too big to fail. This is too big to save. So what I'm hoping is that we finally get it, and the bankers are completely remorseless. They're not reforming themselves. They're fighting every last inch of the way because of their own trauma and their own inner abandonment pattern that I talk about in Hope. So we've got to deal with this. And the way we can deal with this is basically on an individual and collective level, say enough is enough. And if there is a perspective that we have to bail out again, we say no, we don't. Now, what that will do is it will push the banking system to an unsustainable point. And there's two things that can happen then. Basically, either there will be a complete scramble to try and save it, or hopefully people like the Bank of England, who understand this very well, will actually reform the bankers. This is the one time that's left to us, I believe, without a complete destruction of the system to get really radical reform through. And I think what we have to do in every way we can is to write to our senators, our congressmen and women, our MPs, go online and join a VARs and get active, do whatever we can to make our views felt. That the old way is not sustainable. We cannot keep trying to prop up.
We've built a system that is based on debt, creating debt.
Total debt.